Welcome to the Whole Enchilada, a community of high achievers that fight the status quo, rebel against mediocrity, and make life happen. Let's go. Hey, Enchilada Nation, so excited to have you join me again today, and I continue to bring you guests, not only that I think you're going to find a lot of enjoyment listening to and learning from, but as you know, I'm on this journey with you. And I brought along one of my personal, not only one of my personal friends, Mike and I became great friends over the last couple of years, but he's also one of my coaches. And right now I've actually hired Mike to help me with my own personal nutrition. A lot of you guys know that I train regularly, and nutrition is one of those things that is constantly a battle of getting that in check and knowing your body, and also strategically planning how to execute that nutrition plan in a busy world as entrepreneurs. It's funny, Mike, since I've told people recently coming into 2022 that I've hired a nutrition coach to help me tune that up. It's funny the response I get. Any guesses the normal response I get from people?
They'll ask you your goals. They'll ask you like what type of plan you're on. If you're doing keto, they'll probably ask you all kinds of stuff like that.
Also, all sorts of stuff about the strategy. But the first thing they say to me is, why do you have a nutrition coach? Right? Because normally you think of the people hiring a nutrition coach are people on The Biggest Loser or something like that, right? Where that is not the case in the world we live in. If you want to refine down, just like any areas, a lot of us entrepreneurs have coaches in multiple areas of our lives. This is something that, even though I've been in the physical fitness space for a long time through bodybuilding, CrossFit, martial arts, and things like that, that side of it's easy. That's the fun part of it. The nutrition's not the fun part, where even though I could spend the time and understand it on a higher level myself, it makes more sense for me to have an accountability coach. And nobody's better in the business, in my opinion, than you, Mike. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you real quick to introduce yourself. But just so you guys know, not only is Mike an incredible athlete and nutrition coach, he's also a 24-year firefighter serving our community here in Utah. So Mike, what else should we know about you before we jump into this conversation?
Hey, Marcus, I appreciate that. I think the things to know about me is I've been into fitness my whole life. And I started when I was really young. More of the gym and the outdoors was my area. But as I got into my 20s, that's when I really started to get into nutrition, because I realized how much nutrition plays a part in what we do. And that has just progressed over the years. But then as I got into my 30s, I actually got into psychology and the mind. And that's something that I've just taken off on, because I realized that most of what we do is 80% psychology and 20% physiology. So like we talk about the health and nutrition, and the reason why it can be so complicated and hard is because of the psychology that's involved with it, the culture, the family, like all the stuff that's involved with nutrition, and we get emotionally involved with it instead of looking at it through a very simplistic lens. So as I went through as a firefighter, I wanted to get some experience. So I personal trained for 2 years. And then from there, the guy that I was personal training with, we went and we got into corporate wellness, and we did corporate wellness for a couple of years. So going, taking businesses through a lot of this stuff. And then I broke off and I did corporate wellness on my own. And then from there, I actually created my own program called Warrior 5, which I did for 2 years. And now what I'm doing is I'm going to take everything that I have and I'm moving it online, which I'm going to, in the next little while, I'm hoping by the end of January, that's what I'm going to launch my program from there. So I like to biohack stuff. I love to go through and actually experiment with things. One of my most recent experiments was I purchased a Dexcom G6, which is a continuous glucose monitor. It's what diabetics use, and it tells you your blood sugar levels. And this plays into a lot of health and fitness data markers. We won't get deep into that, but it was just something that I like to do. And I did that for 3 months. I learned a ton of stuff about myself and how I can actually help other people. So that's just a little bit more about me.
That's one of the things I love about you since day one when we met several years ago. Because a lot of things in health and fitness are either kind of old news. They've been around for a while, and are in the process of getting debunked or solidified and validated in what they do. But I love that you're constantly studying, right? That's one of the things. You've always got books in your hand. I love the fact that you use yourself as a guinea pig of trying these new things. Even if things that have worked for you in the past, you're open to trying new things to better understand how your body works. And for someone like me, that worked perfect, where I was like, I don't have the time and the energy to be my own guinea pig, but Mike's gone through it. Now let him just direct me in putting that game plan together. So that's one thing I've really appreciated about you, being a student of the game, which is something, as you know, I look for in coaches in both business and in health and nutrition. So I haven't followed up with you yet on this, Mike, but Mike and I met a couple of days ago in preparation just to chat through a couple of things. And he took me through his sauna and cold shower routine one evening. And we were talking about, as a side note, we were talking about our sleep habits and our ability to get deep sleep. And I was complaining that I have a hard time staying in deep sleep. I will tell you, after that sauna cold shower routine, I had like the most deep sleep I've ever had in my life that night, which was incredible. I woke up refreshed and it was a good time. So I owe you big time.
You know, it's crazy. I've been studying sleep for the last 2 years because I've only been able to trace it back to the first time I ever got antibiotics, which was in 2016. I had a surgery, an inguinal hernia surgery, and antibiotics were required. And my health just had this nice gradual decline, and I couldn't figure it out. And then early on 2021, I actually got something called C. diff from some antibiotics from a different surgery that I got. And it turns out that the GI doc, she says she thought that I actually had that from the first time I got antibiotics. I just kept it under control, and then it came out, right? So I took 6 months and learned how to completely rebuild my digestive system. And your digestive system and your sleep, they interplay together, and we don't realize that. And this is kind of a new area that they're diving into. So I used to get a lot of awesome deep sleep, and now I've had to figure out and to rebuild my health and come back to a place. And I'm finally getting back to a place where I actually am getting good quality deep sleep. And that is actually one of the protocols I've been using.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I think it'd be fun to, perhaps a follow-up episode too, to dive into sleep a little bit deeper. Today, though, I know you've prepared 5 areas business professionals can 10x their time and take control of their health. And I think this is a really important topic right now, particularly because we're a couple of weeks into January, and more than likely the majority of our listeners built their goals around family relationships, business goals, and finance goals, and then health goals. And I found in my relationship with a lot of entrepreneurs, the first one of those to go, the first one they give up on is their health goals, because obviously no one wants to give up on their family time, and nobody wants to give up on their financial goals, because that's how they fund their perfect life. However, I will tell you, the perfect life in shape is probably a lot more fun than the perfect life out of shape, right?
Right.
And so it's interesting that we throw that by the wayside, and that could be a regret down the line. So I think it's important for us to learn how to control that and live a healthy lifestyle within the framework of our other ambitious goals with family and business. So walk us through what you're thinking, Mike.
Yeah, so a word that gets thrown around a lot is busy. And that's an interesting, and I know that people are very busy. They got a lot of things going on, but I'd like to reframe that really quick and talk about being more effective, and that's doing the right things. And then once we become effective, we can become more efficient, which is doing things right. So once you know what you're supposed to do, then you can start doing those even better. So a lot of people will sacrifice their health, but this is called false economy, because it's like not taking care of your eyes and your teeth. You know, everybody probably had their mom that would wake them up and get in there and brush their teeth. This is important because as adults, they know how important those things are. You lose your eyes and your teeth, right? It's really hard or impossible to get them back. So it's the same thing with your health. And it can take up to 10x the amount of energy for somebody for somebody's body to heal itself when you have a sickness or disease than it takes to just maintain. And that's something to keep in mind, because if you develop diabetes, let's say, that's why I've been doing this studying with the G6, you develop diabetes, it's really hard to pull out of that nosedive. But diabetes usually is like, there's something called insulin resistance, and it comes on 5 to 10 years before diabetes comes on. So if you see that coming by doing some tests and paying attention to a few things, you can prevent that disease from even happening, which is extremely financially burdening, right? So let me just tell you a personal story about myself and how I learned this the hard way, because I was a lot like, I'm sure, a lot of our listeners. And I've been a firefighter since 1998, but in 2000, I think it was 2005, I went full time. And in 2006, I hit the peak of my stress. I was a firefighter with a second job, and most firefighters have at least a second job, sometimes 3 jobs. And I always tell people, as a firefighter, it's very, very stressful. Even though we only work 48 hours, and then we're off 96. We work 2 days and we're off 4. But I tell people, in that 24 to 48 hours, it's like taking all of your stress in 30 days and compacting it into 2 days. And it's not always like that, but it can be that way. So it's very stressful. So at the same time, I was also covering for my boss at my second job, who was an alcoholic and happened to be a good friend of mine. And then to top it all off, my girlfriend at the time was cheating on me. So I was at such high levels of stress, but my ego was like, I can handle it. I can handle it. I can handle it. I thought. And then guess what my body said? Nope. And it broke. So the day of my birthday, which was in October, I went to bed with the worst headache of my life. It felt like, and I don't get headaches, it felt like somebody was jamming an ice pick in my ear. And I woke up, and when I woke up, I was like, something's not right. And I went into the bathroom and I looked in the mirror, and half of my face was paralyzed. And I thought I'd stroked out. So I called my captain at the time. I told him what was going on. He goes, you got Bell's palsy. And I'm like, and I had no idea what that even was. Turns out Bell's palsy is a disorder brought on by high stress most of the time, high stress. And it's a nervous system where I think it's a virus, I believe, gets into your trigeminal nerve and paralyzes part of your face. Took 6 weeks of extremely diligent work to rebuild my health. And when I get really tired, you can see my left eye starts to kind of droop a little bit. And that's the only thing. There's a lot of people that actually from that disease actually still have their whole face is paralyzed. It never recovers. So I worked really, really hard to recover. So my point being is at that point, I realized that I had to learn how to prioritize certain things and how to learn how to use my mind and all these other tools to actually heal and protect my body ahead of time. So what I'd like to give you guys today, the whole Enchilada Nation, is I'd like to go over the 5 areas. And these 5 areas are really the only 5 areas that we have control over. And they're the biggest areas. And they're not in any particular order, okay? But what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over light, the mind, movement, food, breathing, sleep, and the environment in which you do them, okay? And I'm gonna try to give you guys the best of the best on these areas that I found so that you guys can, you guys don't have to go through what I did. So let's start off. Do you have any questions before I start off and start going into these?
No, at the beginning of this, I said 5, but I think I just counted 7 from the categories you gave me.
It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's actually 6, and then it's actually 6, and then the environment in which you do them. So sorry, it's actually 6. It's not 5.
Beautiful. I just want to make sure I was counting right.
Yeah.
So
that was my bad. 6 areas.
I'm intrigued. Let's jump in. Which one?
Yeah.
Where do you want to start?
The other one was a bonus.
Yeah. But wait, there's more.
So, like light is interesting because it's super important to get light first thing in the morning into your eyes, because I think everybody knows there's something, they've heard of the circadian rhythm, but they don't realize that we wake up when it's dark, we go to a building, and we're inside of a building and we're not getting the natural light that we need. Okay, so the only way that your brain knows if it's day or nighttime is that light shining into your eyes. So one of the best things you can do is you get light in your eyes for 5 to 10 minutes first thing in the morning. And you want it to be as soon as the sun comes up over the mountains, you want to go outside, maybe drink your coffee out there. If you're at work, try to get next to a window and get in there and just get 5 to 10 minutes into your eyes. Now, doing it through a window, they say, is 50 times less effective as being outside. So outside's the best, but if you can't be outside, at least get to a window. And you'll notice as soon as you go to a window, you open up the blinds, you get that light in your eyes, you can feel yourself just come alive, okay? So that's one for the light, okay? During the day, if you can, get as much exposure outside on your skin to the light as possible. I know for a lot of people that are entrepreneurs and busy business people, they're not gonna be able to get outside, okay? But if you can, for lunch, whatever, go outside, eat your lunch and go for a walk if you can get sun outside. You wanna get that vitamin D. If you can't do that, then supplement with vitamin D, Okay, super, super important. Okay. And then the last part of light is develop what's called a light or digital sunset. So at nighttime, try to get to the point where a couple hours before you go to bed, turn off your phones, or at least, like, most phones and laptops have a yellow tint that you can set. So as soon as it hits a certain time, they go yellow, because you don't want that blue light. That blue light makes it so that your brain doesn't produce melatonin, which means if you don't produce melatonin, you're not going to get tired. Okay, that's what produces what's called wired tired. You're not producing melatonin, so you're laying in bed, you're physically tired, but your brain's still running. Okay, so you want to create that bookend of having a digital sunset. So try not to get on your electronics at least an hour before bed, maybe even a little bit longer. Okay, so that's the light portion.
Hey, well, one quick thing I want to add to the light portion, that something I've already implemented this year that's helping me get more light, because that's me, right? I'm up early before it's light. I'm getting my workout and stuff done, and by the time we're rolling, I'm in my office going, right?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of entrepreneurs, it's one of those things that sometimes we're like, man, how many days has it been since I've seen the sunlight?
Yeah.
So one of the things I've been doing is people request meetings with me if it's someone that I think would enjoy it. Instead of going to grab a coffee or a lunch or whatever it is, they'll just say, hey, let's go for a walk.
Yeah.
Right? And it's actually more enjoyable, the conversation, because we're moving our bodies, the endorphins are moving, I'm getting some light. And actually the people on the other side that I invited, it sets a meeting that they're going to remember more. And everyone that I've done it with so far is like, that was actually way better than a lunch.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, walks are huge, especially like right after lunch when you get that food. It helps with lowering blood sugar. It gets oxygen to the brain, and like you said, so you're banging out so many different things in one task. So that's a great idea. So let's move on to the mind. This is near and dear to my heart, because this is one of the things that's really helped me over the last decade, is learning how to control and feed my mind. So what is the mind? Okay, the best definition I've heard is that the brain is the musical instrument and the mind is the music that flows from it. So it's the energy coming from your brain. So if you don't take care of your brain, you're not going to be able to control your mind. Okay, that's really important to understand, to go into. So first thing, feed your mind with powerful material. What is that? That's podcasts, that's books, that's the people that you surround yourself with. This is so imperative to your mental health. Something that I've done, that I started 20 years ago, I do not watch the news. Okay, it's absolute poison. So only get as much news as you feel is necessary, because it's very detrimental to your immune system and to your actual mental health. Okay, so think about that. So, picking books that you want to read, podcasts like this one, that they're going to give you the tools you need. They're going to make you feel good. That's going to be this positive, and the company that you're around. Okay. Understand that fear is misinterpreted energy. Okay. And how I always tell people and explain this to people is, you got people that love to jump out of an airplane and that are excited by it, and other people that are scared to death of it. So what's the difference? It's their interpretation of it, which is going to lead me into my favorite tool that I learned from my coach, that I paid $12,000 to coach from. And this is one of the most valuable tools that I'm going to give your audience here. It's amazing. It's called Catch, Own, Replace. Okay. And how it goes is, first thing you have to do is you have to, that little voice that's in your head, you catch those voices and those things, those thoughts that you're having. Okay. Because every thought is going to lead to a feeling, which is going to lead to an action. So you catch those thoughts. Okay. The O is own. Is you own the fact that you're the one that's creating these thoughts. Okay. Sometimes they just pop in, but you still have to own them. Okay. And you got to understand, part of the ownership is that you're adding meaning to those thoughts, meaning you're creating the perception. That's why I said fear is misinterpreted energy. Okay. Now here comes the important part, which is replace. So you've caught the thought, you've owned the thought, and now you go, okay, now I've got to replace the thought, or what we like to call upgrade the thought. Okay, to a thought that serves you. Okay, this is very important. So if you go catch, own, analyze, that's not going to work. You have to change the thought, because the thought leads to a feeling, leads to an action, leads to the result that you want. So that's the key. So you take control of your mind, which is practice. This is what meditation is. It's practice. And once you do that, that's the key.
Boom. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, that's phenomenal, right?
Yep.
So
I think one of the things that's important with that replacement piece is almost predetermining, like we know what those naggy little voices that come up in our head, and they repeat themselves, right? And so if we know what those patterns are of those negative repeated phrases that show up in our world, we can already predetermine what would I replace that with. The next time it shows up, you don't have to put time and energy in deciding what that replacement is. It's like, oh, there it is, and this is the replacing thought I'm going to give it. I love that.
And that's why it becomes the most beautiful word is practice. You get to practice it, because before you know it, you think it's instantaneously. But the thing is, it's just that you've done it so many times, it's that fast. So as you start to slow that down and you go, I'm feeling this way because of this thought I had last night, right? This maybe it was an argument I got with this person and I haven't let it go, right? And once you revisit that, and then you're able to change that and you say, I'm going to come up with a thought that serves me. Because a lot of people go, well, I want to get into what's wrong or right. But that's very subjective, right? So it's always up for interpretation. So it's better to say, well, what can I think that serves me? And you can always come up with something better. That's why gratitude's so powerful, because it serves us. And when you get into gratitude, that changes your state. So that's what we're talking about. Okay.
I love it.
Catch, show, and replace. All right, let's move into movement. Any thoughts before we move into movement?
No, I love this. Good.
Okay.
Let's keep it rolling.
So my favorite principle with movement is scale, but never miss. Okay. So whatever it is that you decide, you want to build your movement around your lifestyle. You don't have to go to the gym. You don't have to play a sport. You don't have to do anything. But you definitely have to move, because our bodies are meant to move. Motion is lotion. After hurting my back multiple times, I learned that the way that it heals is moving, right? Just getting out and walking, just moving. So whatever you do, just make sure you move. So if you're going to do a leg day, let's say, and you can't get to the gym, well, you can do max, lunges or squats in the corner, even at work. Like, so it's a scale but never miss, because you're training your mind and you're training your routine, which is essential. People will make excuses of why they miss whatever it is they're trying to do, because exercise is hard, right? It's hard. But I'm gonna give you something that I heard a doctor, Dr. Russell Saraski say, and I love this. I believe this since day one, but I love finally hearing a doctor say it. And he said, in almost all cases, whenever an exercise is compared to any antidepressant, exercise meets or beats the antidepressant effects. In almost all cases.
Preach.
Okay?
I believe that.
That is mind-blowing, right? We know this, I think we know this intuitively, but it's like to hear a doctor come out, and this is based off of all the studies. Like, he read all the studies that was comparing exercise to these drugs. So when you're doing movement, number one rule is don't get hurt. Don't get hurt. Scale it around, or scale but never miss, and revolve it around your lifestyle. Like, find out the things that you like: hiking, biking, right? Walking, dancing, whatever it is. Like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, it's beautiful. When you do the things that you love, you don't have to remind yourself to do them.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point here. I think a lot of people pick an activity, a movement, an exercise regime, because they see somebody else that's in shape and they say, oh, well, I ride a bike for 4 hours a day or whatever it is. And they think, oh, that's the path I have to take. And that's a recipe for giving up. If it's not something you enjoy, you're not going to do it. And this is a great opportunity. We talk about, a lot of times multitasking is ineffective, but if you can combine a hobby that makes you happy with movement that increases your endorphins, it's going to double down on that happiness. So when it comes to calories in and calories out, there's a lot of ways to burn calories. It doesn't have to be one specific way. I think it's really important to find something that you're passionate about and you enjoy.
Coming back to calories, after the other night, not the night we were there, but last night when I went, I decided to put on my heart rate monitor and see how many calories I was burning.
Yeah.
So after an hour, I went a little bit longer, and I had a few more breaks in between. 500 calories that I burned in that session.
Wow.
sitting in the sauna and doing cold showers. Okay.
Wow.
That's one of the reasons why it's like cardiovascular fitness. So not to get off track, but I thought that was kind of a very interesting side note there.
Love it. Let's move into the next category.
All right, so food. Okay, this is the hot topic for most people. I'm going to simplify it, and if you want, we can go a little bit deeper into, like you were talking about, calories and some things like this. But I like to tell people basically it's with food, it's all about preparation, and people will roll their eyes when you talk about food prep, but it's not what people think. It's when people think food prep, they think they're going to have to like have all their meals prepped out ahead of time in Tupperware. When I say food prep, it's have a plan ahead of time. And what I like to do is I break my food down into basically protein, carbs, and greens. I cook it ahead of time, or whatever meal I'm cooking. I always cook more than I can eat that meal. And I use Ziploc bags, all kinds of different Ziploc bags. So I can go to the fridge, I reach in, I have a bag of, like right now, I've got a bag of ground beef, I've got a couple of bags of steak and a bag of chicken. It's already cooked up. I've got romaine lettuce. It's already done. So I go to the kitchen and I can just put it on a plate. If you're going somewhere, then you get a cooler system, right? Or arrange that you can have your stuff in the fridge. You got to have stuff ahead of time. I like to have a double redundant system. So if I don't have that, what's my backup? And I like to have a backup, which is usually some type of protein powder or a protein bar and an apple. That's my favorite, right? Some people can use other things, but that's what I really like. So if you're not prepared, I've seen this time and time again at the fire department, is that when you get stressed out and you get hungry, you're just going to eat whatever in your face. That's just the way it is, and it's understandable, right? So if you're not prepared, you're going to fail 100%. Have you found in your experience? I mean, Marcus, I
agree with this.
This is feedback on your stressful lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, this is something you've helped me a lot with, because the truth of the matter is I'm an incredibly disciplined person as it is. So if I'm in control of my day and my environment, actually eating healthy is very easy for me. It's when something shakes up with my day, my environment, that's where it gets a little bit more challenging. If I'm away from my normal routine, that's where I'm finding myself making bad choices, right? And so and for those of you listening to this, Mike's not just preaching; he does exactly this. I've been to his house and seen his fridge, and you see bags of meat in there, right? And so I'm kind of following suit, where I'm cooking a bunch of meat beforehand, exactly how I like it. I'm going on a road trip this weekend, and I'm going to be prepping some food to take with me, and it's more enjoyable, honestly, than the drive-through at Taco Bell or what the stuff you're going to grab at the gas station anyway, right? It's just a little bit of foresight and preparation. But it's super doable. And then the other thing I think is important that you may touch on is how easy it is now to track your food with the apps that are out there. It's not like it used to be, where you'd have to like start calculating things off the food labels and things like that. It's literally scanning a barcode, or it is so easy now. There's really no excuse to tracking it, just like we track the important lead measures in our business.
Yeah, they've made it actually foolproof for us, and it's great, because a lot of people will get weight loss, fat loss, and health kind of mixed up. And I like to have the foundation of health, and then I stack on the muscle building and performance and fat loss on top of that, right? So basically, if you want to talk about health real quick, I mean, basically it's like an 80-20 of whole foods. Make sure that 80% of your diet is whole foods, and foods that are not in a package, foods that are mostly good proteins, whole food sources of carbohydrate, stuff that's not in a box, stuff that's not processed. That's one of the foundational blocks. Hydrate, right? Making sure that you're getting plenty of water, especially first thing in the morning. Focus on healthy fats, right? Fats generally take care of themselves, but there's so many dangerous fats that are in all kinds of processed foods. So if you're getting in whole foods, the fats are going to take care of themselves, and you can supplement with like fish oils and fatty acids of that type. And then fill with fiber. Make sure you're getting your fiber. You can get fiber supplements, but just make sure you're getting some vegetables to make sure digestive health is good and golden. Yeah. So go ahead.
I think one of the things that I really love about our thing, like, again, it's so easy for a lot of us that are a lot of our entrepreneur followers are students, right? We want to understand the information, and we've got to pick and choose what rabbit holes we are going to go down and which ones we're just going to go deep enough in to have the effect, right? And so this is honestly, for nutrition, this is one of those things that when I get hyped up on it, I find myself wanting to go deeper down the rabbit hole, but it pulls me off of bigger priorities. And so one of the things you've helped me with is to really simplify my food approach, where, yeah, I could get really specific on what carbs, what portion of carbs, what portion of fats. But realistically for me right now, what we're focused on is I've got to get 186 grams of protein, and I've got to stay within a 2,200 calorie range every single day. And I'm finding that if I focus on those two numbers and a gallon of water, if I focus on those three things from a whole food approach as much as I can, my carbs and my fats are taking care of themselves, right? And, and the results are showing up. So you helped me go through that process and say, okay, let's just focus on these three things: 186 grams of protein, 2,200 calories, 1 gallon of water, and things are showing up the way they're supposed to show up, right? And then we can refine down from there.
Absolutely. To button up the food portion, like we went over those few things on the focus on the health portion of it. And when it comes down to fat loss, which is basically how people look, there's two parts. There's composition, which is like the weight, which is the exercise portion of it, right? But then as far as weight loss, that has to do with calories. So if you want to look at it, and we're going to simplify it, then calories are king, and everything is when it comes to fat loss, calories are king, and you build everything underneath that. So first you need to know what your calories are, which is based off of your lean muscle mass. From there, right, then with, like you said 186, and people were like, well, where do you get 186? Well, that's your lean muscle mass. So that's all of your body weight minus your fat, because that's what's actually burning the calories in your body. And that's a good baseline for the amount of protein. And when you prioritize protein, like we said, and then you eat the remaining of your carbohydrates and your fats within the context of that calorie range that we gave you, then that's where the results are. Then it becomes a math, like you said, becomes a tracking and a math game. And it becomes easy, because then you have something to focus on and you're consistent, and then you see the results. It's not confusing. Man, it's cool, because actually people are like, well, I want to do keto. Cool, do keto within that. Well, I want to do carnivore. Cool, do carnivore within that. Well, I want to be a vegan. Cool, do vegan within that. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. That's what's beautiful about it. So it's simplified.
Yeah, okay? Great point. Because that was one of the things I approached you with, is I don't like to eat in the morning. So the intermittent fasting piece for me is like easy. I don't eat in the morning, but I could just as easily hit those goals eating a big breakfast and tailoring it different throughout the day, right?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Let's move to breath.
Okay, so breathing. So here's the quote for the breathing. The brain is the king of the body, but the breath is the king of the brain. Okay, so I'll say it again. The brain is the king of the body, but the breath is the king of the brain. So in other words, people, when you can't get out of your mind, you're so stressed out, you have such high levels of anxiety, it's time to focus on your breath, because your breathing will downregulate your brain and tell your brain everything's okay. So whatever you do, learn how to find a breathing practice that works for you. There's so many out there. I like Wim Hof. Wim Hof breathing. Now, with that being said, Wim Hof breathing actually brings you up, but what it does is it silences everything else and brings you into the now. So it's a good place to start from. But if I was to give people a simplistic example of it, or to explain it, is that when you breathe in, you activate what's called the sympathetic system, which is the fight or flight. When you breathe out, it's the parasympathetic. So when you breathe in, it brings you up, and when you breathe out, it brings you down. So breathe in and then extend your breath outward. So if you take 2 seconds to breathe in, take 6 seconds to exhale, and that will bring you down. Okay. So if you're in a place and you notice that you're really stressed and anxious, take a big breath in, maybe hold it at the very top for a second or so, and then double or triple the amount of time of seconds that it takes to exhale that, and do that a couple of times, see what happens. It's like magic. With that being said, that's what meditation is. Meditation is turning off the thinking mind and going into the sensing mind, which then turns that part of your brain that causes the anxiety, and you're able to shut that down, and your body can down-regulate. It's really, people over complicated, but that's how simple it is. So ultimately, just find a breathing practice that works for you, and then just start using it. But ultimately, just bring your awareness back to your breathing, that right there will actually give you some relief.
Yeah, I love this. This was a big lesson for me. A lot of those different crucible events that I've gone to with different people, one of the things that they would say over and over and over again is, if you control your breath, you control your mind, not the other way around. It's not control your mind to control your breath. But if you're in a stressful situation, we tend to start breathing heavy and fast, and then our brain and our bodies react to it. But if we can control our breath in any situation, then all of a sudden we overcome and retake control of our mind. Another statistic that I thought was really interesting is, I can't remember exactly the percentage, but it was some shocking number that the majority of us only end up using like 15 or 20% of our lungs, meaning that we take these short breaths, which means we have this carbon dioxide and buildup just sitting there in our lungs that we never push out because we're not breathing deep enough in and deep enough out to like push that out. And when I heard that, it just made me feel gross inside, that they're inside my lungs. There's this stuff just sitting in there and circulating. So I start doing these box breathing techniques to really fill my lungs up with new air, push everything else out, and you do feel a difference.
It is absolute magic, especially when you get with somebody who really knows what they're doing. It's nothing short of magic. And there's multiple different practices. You know, people go the yoga route, and a lot of what Wim Hof does is based off of yoga. There's so many different disciplines. So just find something that works for you, to where you can bring your consciousness back to your breathing, and it will help in every aspect. 100%.
Love it. Let's I know we touched briefly on sleep, but what else you got for us on sleep was your next category?
So yeah, just to button up with sleep, is if there was a magic bullet, it would be sleep. So this is why I've been focusing so hard on it. So there's a couple things. We talked about circadian rhythm and making sure that you get up and you get sunlight in your eyes. I think a lot of people, because there's been a lot of talk about sleep right now, but ultimately what you're looking for is your bedroom should be cold, dark, and quiet. Okay, and those are awesome for sleep. Some other things that you can look at is magnesium. You can use, most people are severely deficient magnesium, which helps your body relax. That can help for sleep and a whole host of other things. Understand that if you want to get to sleep, if you can get to sleep before midnight, okay, then they say that's like the golden hours, because every hour before midnight that you get to sleep is like equal to like 2 hours. Okay. Not only that, but the first front end is your deep sleep, and the last end is your REM sleep, typically. Okay. So if you wake up early, then you might not mentally be as acute because you didn't get the REM, because REM is to repair your mind, and deep is to repair your body. So if you go to bed late, your body's not going to repair as well. And if you wake up earlier, then you might not get mentally recovered as well. Okay. And here's a quick hack that we were talking about the other day, that people are going to laugh at, but it's really cool. And that is that you can tape your mouth when you go to bed at night. We won't get into the science of that, what that does, but one of the world-renowned experts, Patrick McKeown, he talks about that. People that have sleep apnea, when their mouth opens up, their tongue falls back, they stop breathing, and it wakes them up 15 to 20 times a night. You put the tape over the mouth, it forces them to breathe through their nose, opens up those areas, and makes them so they can use carbon dioxide, which then makes them so they can use oxygen, which then puts them in deeper levels of sleep. It's this miracle. It's so easy just by putting tape over your mouth. People are just really freaked out about it, which is understandable, right? So that's a nice little hack that people can try if they want.
Yeah, I had a good laugh when you told me about that, just imagining you with your mouth taped at night. And as you know, this is something I'm studying right now to better understand my sleep patterns. And I almost felt better being naive and not knowing my sleep patterns, but now I'm determined to figure it out because I think it will have an impact on me. Honestly, early on in my entrepreneur years, I slept very little. And because I had burnt the boats, I knew I had to make it happen. I would only sleep 3-4 hours a night for a long time and felt great, but it caught up with me to where now it's like, I feel like I'm catching up on lost sleep time. But I want to figure it out, because I don't want to spend a lot of time sleeping. I want to spend an appropriate amount of time in the appropriate type of sleep, so I can spend the rest of my time out living my life.
Yeah. And when you get good sleep, and I think everybody can attest to this, when you get good sleep, you're so much more efficient and effective at everything else you do. So if you can get better quality sleep, if you can't get quantity, then at least focus on your quality, right? That's huge and imperative. And focusing on it like it's a religion. It should be spiritual, because like that is your That is when you go to sleep, you produce human growth hormone. The other time is when you exercise. So if you don't exercise and you don't get good sleep, you're missing out all your growth hormone. And that is where you get your health and longevity from. So
wrap us up with environment.
Okay, so I'll wrap up with environment, and then I can just go over just an overview of like the best of those areas, and then we can finish up. So the environment is just the environment in which you do those things. Okay, so a lot of people don't think about that, but the environment in which you do the things above is so important. Some people say that environment is more powerful than genetics, because that's what epigenetics are. Epigenetics is like how you do your actions and behaviors turn on and off certain genes. Okay, so your environment is key, and that includes, you know, where you do things and the people you do them with. That's very, very important. So become very aware of how your environment affects you. So you want to ask yourself, what gives me energy and what drains my energy? Those are great questions to ask yourself, and do more of the things that give you more energy, and do less or delegate the things that drain your energy. That's really to simplify that aspect of it. So let me wrap this up. A simple plan of action for all those areas. Okay. Number 1, practice controlling your breath. Number 2, create a routine to get more and better sleep. 3, scale but never miss moving every day. 4, feed your mind quality information and quality people. 5, get 15 minutes early morning light in your eyes. 6, be aware of what gives you energy and what drains it, and do more of the latter.
Boom.
That's how I would sum it up. That's the plan.
I love that. The only thing I would add to that, because I think that's the perfect plan, is somewhere along the line, something we said today, there was a negative voice that came inside your head, and just go back to the catch, own, replace. Notice what is already in your mind trying to talk you out of taking control of one of these areas in your life at a higher level. Own it, recognize where it comes from, know that you're creating your perception around it. Whether it's probably not true what you're creating around it, and replace it with a positive thought, because health is something that every single one of us has to take more serious, particularly as we're getting a little bit older, and not at the expense of other things in our world. So Mike, you're freaking awesome, man. I really appreciate you taking the time and not only sharing with our listeners today some of your insight, but just for our friendship and you and I batting ideas back and forth. You're a good dude. I'm proud to know you, proud to call you a friend.
I appreciate you, Marcus. It's been my pleasure.
Okay, we'll have you back soon. Thanks everybody for leaning in. Don't not take action from this. That's a double negative. So maybe I'm going to say it as a double positive. Do take action. Choose something that you're going to do with this. As you guys know, we're focused on helping you live life on an elevated status, and health plays a huge role in that. So don't forget, go live life on your terms. Thanks again.